They called him the architect of ruin, a man who could dismantle a Fortune 500 company with a single signature. But tonight, at the Vault, an underground poker club buried deep beneath the streets of Los Angeles, Damon Vance did not want a merger. He wanted blood. The room was colder than a morgue. The air conditioning was set to 60 degrees, a tactic designed to keep players uncomfortable and alert. But Damon sat in his chair like a king on a throne, his bespoke navy suit unwrinkled, his expression carved from granite. Across from him sat Elliot Carver, the CEO of a failing robotics firm. Carver was sweating. A single bead of perspiration rolled down his temple, catching the dim light of the low-hanging chandelier. The game was Texas Hold'em. The pot was currently sitting at $3.5 million, but the money did not matter. In this room, silence was the currency. The vault had one golden rule: absolute silence during a hand, no speaking, no coughing, no breathing too loud. If you broke the silence, you forfeited the pot. Damon Vance stared at the cards on the felt, two aces. He looked up at Carver. He knew Carver was holding a pair of kings. He had been manipulating the man for 3 hours, pushing him to the edge of sanity. Damon reached for his chips. He moved his hand slowly, agonizingly slowly. He was about to go all in. He was about to ruin this man's life. In the shadows of the room, Riley Quinn adjusted the heavy tray on her shoulder. Her arms burned. She had been working for 12 hours straight. Her feet, crammed into cheap black flats, felt like they were bleeding. She was 24 years old, but her eyes held the exhaustion of someone who had lived 3 lifetimes. Riley was invisible, a ghost in a black uniform. She knew the drill. Replenish drinks, clear ashtrays, never make eye contact. She moved toward table 4. Her mind was drifting. She was thinking about the phone call she had received at 6 p.m. The lawyer. Her sister's trial was in 2 weeks. They needed $50,000 for the retainer, or Maya was going to prison for a crime she did not commit. $50,000. Riley had $42 in her bank account. She stepped forward to place a fresh glass of scotch near Damon's elbow. But as she leaned in, her shoe caught on the thick edge of the plush carpet. It happened in slow motion. Riley pitched forward. She tried to correct her balance, but her exhausted legs gave out. The heavy crystal tray slipped from her fingers. The sound that followed was catastrophic. Glass shattered against the hardwood floor. Ice cubes skittered across the room like diamonds. A wave of amber liquid exploded outward, drenching the pristine Italian leather of Damon Vance's shoes and splashing up onto his suit pants. The noise echoed off the mahogany walls. It was a violent intrusion in the sacred silence. Every head in the room turned. Elliot Carver, the nervous CEO, jumped in his seat. The sudden noise broke his concentration. He threw his cards down face up. Fold, Carver gasped, his voice cracking with relief. The dealer looked at Damon. Mr. Vance, your opponent has folded due to outside interference. However, since the silence was broken by staff error, the hand is void. The pot is split. Damon Vance did not move. He did not look at the split pot. He did not look at the $3.5 million he had just failed to win. He looked down at his shoes. They were soaked in 18-year-old scotch. Then slowly, terrifiedly slowly, he lifted his eyes to look at Riley. The room ceased to breathe. The floor manager, a rotund man named Mr. Henderson, was already rushing over, his face pale as a sheet. "Mr. Vance," Henderson wheezed, "I am so sorry. This girl is new. She is incompetent. I will handle this immediately. Get out, Riley, get out before I silence." Damon whispered. The word was soft, but it carried more weight than a scream. Mr. Henderson froze. Damon stood up. He towered over Riley. He was 6 feet 2 inches of coiled aggression. He looked at the shattered glass. Then he looked at Riley's trembling hands. "You just cost me $1.7 million, Damon said. His voice was smooth, dark, and utterly devoid of mercy. I am so sorry, sir," Riley stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "I will clean it up." "You will clean it up," Damon repeated, a cruel amusement dancing in his eyes. "Unless you have a spare $2 million in that apron, you cannot clean this up. He stepped closer. He smelled of rain and expensive tobacco. "Get on your knees," Mr. Henderson hissed at her. "Beg him for forgiveness." Riley looked up. She saw the cruelty in the room. She saw the wealthy men in their tuxedos looking at her like she was an insect to be crushed. Something inside her snapped. It was not fear, it was exhaustion. It was the weight of her sister's trial, the debt, the years of hiding. "No," Riley said. The word hung in the air. Damon raised an eyebrow. "No," he asked. "I said I was sorry," Riley said, her voice shaking but clear. "It was an accident. I am not getting on my knees." Damon stared at her. For the first time in 5 years, he looked surprised. He studied her face. He saw the dark circles under her eyes, but he also saw the fire in them. Then his gaze dropped to her hands. They were red and chapped from scrubbing floors, but the fingers were long. The tips of her left fingers were calloused. Hard, thick skin. He knew those hands. "You are a musician," Damon stated. It was not a question. Riley hid her hands behind her back. "I am a waitress." Damon turned his head. On the far wall of the VIP room, mounted in a glass case, was a violin. It was a Guarneri del Gesù replica, worth more than the entire building. It was strictly for decoration. Damon walked over to the case. He opened it. The latch released with a heavy metallic sound. He pulled the instrument out. He walked back to Riley and held it out. "Play," he commanded. Riley stared at the wood. It had been 3 years. 3 years since her father died. 3 years since she had touched a bow. "I do not play anymore," she whispered. Damon leaned in, his voice dropping to a predator's growl. "You owe me nearly $2 million. You have 2 choices. You can walk out that back door, and I will have my lawyers garnish every paycheck you ever earn for the rest of your miserable life. I will bury you in so much debt you will not be able to afford air to breathe." Riley felt tears prick her eyes. Or, Damon continued, "You can entertain me. The game is ruined. I am bored. If you can play something that does not make my ears bleed, if you can justify your existence in my presence for 3 minutes, I will wipe the debt." The room was silent. Mr. Henderson looked like he was about to faint. Riley looked at the violin. Then she looked at Damon Vance. She saw the arrogance. She saw the challenge. She reached out and took the instrument. It felt heavy and cold. She tightened the bow. She tucked the violin under her chin. The wood smelled of varnish and old memories. She closed her eyes. She thought of her father, lying in the hospital bed. She thought of the men who had ruined him. She thought of the $50,000 she needed to save her sister. She did not play a lullaby. Riley drove the bow into the strings with the force of a physical blow. The first note was a scream. It was not the polite classical music the wealthy patrons were used to. Riley launched into a violent, deconstructed version of Vivaldi's Summer, but she played it with the aggression of heavy metal. Her fingers flew across the fingerboard, moving so fast they were a blur. The sound was jagged, raw, and electric. She opened her eyes. She stared directly at Damon Vance as she played. She poured all her rage into the music, the years of poverty, the humiliation, the grief. The melody spiraled up faster and faster. She was shredding the bow hairs. The sound bounced off the mahogany walls, filling the room with a chaotic, beautiful energy. The CEO, Elliot Carver, sat with his mouth open. Mr. Henderson had forgotten to breathe, but Riley only saw Damon. He was watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He was not looking at her like a waitress anymore. He was looking at her like he had discovered a new element on the periodic table. She hit the cadenza, a rapid-fire sequence of high notes that required impossible technical skill. She did not miss a single intonation. It was perfect. It was lethal. With one final, slashing movement, she cut the last note short. The silence that returned to the room was different now. It was heavy, vibrating. Riley lowered the violin. Her chest was heaving. Sweat trickled down her temple. For 10 seconds, no one moved. Then Damon Vance began to clap. Slowly, rhythmically. The sound of his applause was the only thing in the room. "Impressive," Damon said. He took a step toward her. "You are not just a waitress. You are Riley Quinn, daughter of Marcus Quinn. Riley stiffened. Do not say his name. Your father was a genius, Damon said, ignoring her protest, and a fool. He lost everything because he did not know how to play the game. He stepped into her personal space. He reached out and took the violin from her trembling hands. You passed the test, Miss Quinn. I can go. Riley asked, her voice breathless. The debt is cleared. Damon smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf that had just cornered a deer. The debt for the suit is cleared, he said. But now we have a new negotiation. He turned to the floor manager. Henderson, fire her. What? Riley gasped. You said I would wipe the debt, Damon interrupted smoothly. I did not say you could keep your job. You are fired. He turned back to Riley. Grab your coat. You are coming with me. Where? Riley demanded. I am not going anywhere with you. Damon checked his watch. It is 2 a.m. Your sister's legal team needs that retainer by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning or the plea deal is off the table. Correct. Riley felt the blood drain from her face. How? How do you know that? I know everything, Damon said. I know you work 2 jobs. I know you live in a studio apartment in Koreatown that smells like mildew. And I know you need $50,000. He opened the heavy oak door of the club. I am offering you a job, Riley. A single job. It pays $500,000. Riley froze. $500,000. That would pay for the lawyer, the rehab, everything. What is the job? She asked, suspicion narrowing her eyes. Damon paused in the doorway. The rain was pounding against the pavement outside. I need a wife, he said simply. And you, Riley Quinn, are going to marry me. The interior of Damon's limousine was silent as a tomb. The windows were tinted so dark the city outside was just a blur of neon streaks. Riley sat as far away from him as possible, pressed against the cold leather of the door. You are insane, she said. Damon poured himself a glass of sparkling water. He did not offer her one. I am practical, he corrected. Next week, the board of directors for Vance Global is voting on a merger that will give me control of the sentient AI network being developed in Silicon Valley. It is a $1 trillion industry. So buy it, Riley snapped. You have the money. It is not about money, Damon said, taking a sip. The board is old-fashioned, conservative. They think I am a loose cannon, a corporate raider with no moral compass. They are right, of course, but to get their vote, I need to appear stable. I need to appear domestic, so you want to hire a fake wife. Damon set the glass down. Not fake, legally binding. We marry for 1 year. We attend the galas. We smile for the cameras. You play the role of the reformed artist who melted the heart of the Ice King. The public loves a redemption arc, and after a year, we divorce. You walk away with $500,000 and a non-disclosure agreement. Riley stared at him. It was tempting. God, it was tempting, but she looked at his eyes. They were gray and cold like a winter ocean. There is a catch, she said. There is always a catch with men like you. Damon turned to face her fully. The man trying to block this merger is Gavin Thorne. Riley stopped breathing. The name hit her like a physical blow. Gavin Thorne, the tech mogul, the billionaire philanthropist, and the man who destroyed her father. 3 years ago, her father, Marcus Quinn, had been the most celebrated composer in America. Gavin Thorne had commissioned him for a symphony, but it was a trap. Thorne had accused Marcus of plagiarism, forged evidence, and sued him into bankruptcy. The shame had driven Marcus to an overdose. You know, Riley whispered. I know Thorne killed your father, Damon said, not with a gun, but with a lawsuit. Why do you care? Riley asked. Because Damon said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Gavin Thorne is not just a thief. He is a monster. He uses his modeling agencies as a front for trafficking. He moves people like cargo. Damon leaned forward. He took something from me too, Riley. Years ago. I am going to destroy him. But I need access to his private servers to prove the trafficking. The only way to get close enough is to be invited to his inner circle. And the only way I get invited is if I am the respectable married CEO of Vance Global. He extended his hand. Help me kill the king, Riley, and you get your life back. Riley looked at his hand. It was large, manicured, and steady. She knew she should run. This man was dangerous. He was pulling her into a war zone, but she thought of her father. She thought of Gavin Thorne's smug face on the cover of Forbes magazine. She thought of the $50,000 for her sister. "I have conditions," Riley said. Damon raised an eyebrow. "Name them." "1. The money is wired to my sister's lawyer immediately. Tonight." "Done." "2. I am not a prop. If we are doing this, I want to be involved. I want to know the plan. I am not just a pretty face to stand next to you." "Agreed." "And 3. Riley narrowed her eyes. "We do not share a bed. This is business. You do not touch me unless there are cameras." Damon's lips quirked upward. A genuine amusement flickered in his eyes. "Do not flatter yourself, Miss Quinn. I do not sleep with employees." He kept his hand extended. "Do we have a deal?" Riley took a deep breath. She reached out and grasped his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and electric. "Deal," she said. Damon signaled to the driver. "Go to the penthouse. The bride needs a dress." The next morning, Riley woke up in a guest room that was larger than her entire apartment. The sheets were Egyptian cotton, thread count somewhere in the thousands. She sat up, disoriented. Then the memories of the night before came crashing back. The poker game, the violin, the deal. There was a knock on the door. A team of 3 stylists entered, wheeling racks of clothes. "Good morning, Mrs. Vance-to-be," the lead stylist chirped. "Mr. Vance has ordered a complete wardrobe overhaul." For the next 4 hours, Riley was poked, prodded, and painted. They cut her hair, styling it into a sharp, angular bob that highlighted her cheekbones. They waxed, exfoliated, and polished. It felt like preparing for battle. When they were finished, Riley looked in the mirror. The girl from the poker club was gone. In her place was a woman who looked sharp, expensive, and dangerous. She was wearing a tailored white power suit with a plunging neckline. It was severe and stunning. She walked out into the main living area of the penthouse. Damon was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, overlooking the Lowe's Angels skyline. He was on the phone. "The acquisition proceeds at 1400 hours," he was saying. "Crush them." He hung up as he heard her approach. He turned around. He stopped. His eyes traveled from her heels up to her eyes. He did not say anything for a long moment. "Well," Riley challenged, smoothing the lapel of her jacket. "Do I look like a billionaire's wife?" "You look." Damon paused. He seemed to be searching for the word. "Adequate, adequate," Riley scoffed. "This suit costs more than my college tuition." Damon walked over to her. He stopped inches away. The air between them crackled. "The suit is fine," he said softly, "but you are still slouching." He reached out. His fingers brushed her chin, tilting her head up. Riley's breath hitched. "Stand tall, Riley. You are not a victim anymore. You are a predator. When we walk into that gala tonight, you own the room. You look down on them, even me." Riley held his gaze. She saw the challenge in his eyes. "I can handle it," she whispered. "Good," Damon said, dropping his hand, "because tonight is the Horizon Summit. Gavin Thorne will be there." Riley's stomach twisted. "Tonight." "Tonight," Damon confirmed. "And he will come for you. He will try to rattle you. He will mention your father." "Let him try," Riley said, her voice hardening. Damon stared at her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. It was a massive emerald-cut diamond set in platinum. It was heavy, ostentatious, and beautiful. "Put it on," he ordered. Riley slid the ring onto her finger. It felt like a shackle and a shield. "Tonight we start the war," Damon said. "Do not flinch." The Horizon Summit was held at the Griffith Observatory. The entire building was lit up in purple and gold. A red carpet stretched up the steps, flanked by hundreds of screaming paparazzi. When the limousine pulled up, the flashes were blinding. Damon turned to her. "Showtime." He opened the door. The noise of the crowd hit them like a physical wave. Damon stepped out first, buttoning his tuxedo jacket. He reached back and offered his hand to Riley. She took it. She stepped out into the chaos. "Damon Vance, who is she? Is it true about the merger?" Damon ignored them. He pulled Riley close to his side. His arm went around her waist. It felt protective, solid. He guided her up the stairs with a subtle, powerful grace. Inside, the observatory was transformed into a playground for the tech elite. Waiters with silver trays circulated with champagne. The air smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. Riley felt eyes on her, assessing her, judging her. "Ignore them," Damon murmured in her ear. "They are sheep." "Damon," a voice boomed. The crowd parted. A man approached them. He was tall, with silver hair and a tan that looked too perfect. He wore a velvet tuxedo jacket. He was smiling, but his eyes were dead. It was Gavin Thorne. Riley felt her heart slam against her ribs. She wanted to scream. She wanted to claw his eyes out. "Steady," Damon whispered, his grip on her waist tightening imperceptibly. "Gavin," Damon said, his voice cool and bored. "I see you are still wearing velvet. Bold choice." Thorne laughed. It sounded like dry leaves crunching. "And I see you have brought a guest," Thorne said, turning his reptilian gaze to Riley. "My fiancée," Damon corrected. "Riley Quinn." Thorne's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Quinn," he repeated, "any relation to Marcus Quinn?" Riley forced herself to smile. It was razor sharp. "He was my father," she said. Thorne's eyes narrowed. "Ah, yes, tragic business. He was a talented man, but weak. I suppose talent skips a generation." It was a direct insult, a test. Riley stepped forward. She did not back down. "Actually, Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice projecting clearly, "talent does not skip. It evolves. My father played by the rules. I do not." Thorne looked surprised. Then he looked at Damon. "She a spirit, Damon. Be careful. Spirited things tend to break." Damon stepped between them. He towered over Thorne. "If she breaks, Gavin, I will break everything you own, starting with your stock portfolio and ending with your jaw." Thorne's smile vanished. The threat was real. "Enjoy the party," Thorne spat. He walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Riley let out a breath she had been holding. Her hands were shaking. "You did good," Damon said softly. "He threatened me," Riley whispered. "He is scared," Damon said. "He knows who you are. Now we dance." The orchestra began to play a tango. It was dramatic, sharp, and punctuated by the rhythm of the drums. Damon swept Riley onto the dance floor. "I do not know how to tango," Riley hissed as he spun her around. "Follow my lead," Damon commanded. He pulled her flush against his chest. His hand was splayed across the small of her back, burning through the fabric of her suit. Step, turn, dip. They moved together. At first it was stiff. But then Riley found the rhythm. She matched his intensity. They moved across the floor like a single entity. The crowd watched them. They were a striking pair. The dark, brooding billionaire and the sharp, white-clad musician. While they danced, they strategized. "Thorne is wearing a smart watch," Damon whispered, his lips brushing her ear. "It is a prototype. It contains the encryption keys for his servers. How do we get it?" Riley asked, spinning under his arm. "We do not need the watch," Damon said. "We need the signal. Tomorrow night, Thorne is hosting a private party on his yacht. You are going to perform, me?" "Yes, I booked you as the surprise entertainment. While you play, I will use a proximity cloner to copy the data from his watch, but I need him close to the stage. You have to draw him in." Riley looked up at him. Their faces were inches apart. She could see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes. "I can do that," she said. Damon held her gaze. The music swelled. The tension between them shifted. It was no longer just business. It was something hotter, dangerous. For a second, Riley forgot about the heist. She forgot about the revenge. She just felt his hand on her waist, his body moving against hers. Damon leaned in. His gaze dropped to her lips. "Do not fall for me, Riley," he warned softly. "I'm not the hero of this story." Riley smirked, breathless. "Good," she said. "I prefer the villain." Damon spun her one last time, dipping her low as the music ended. The next night the air at the marina was thick with fog. Gavin Thorne's yacht, the Leviathan, was a floating palace. Damon and Riley sat in a black van parked at the end of the pier. Riley was wearing a dress made of silver chainmail. It shimmered like moonlight. It was heavy, cold, and armored. Strapped to her back was an electric violin. It was a custom Fender, painted matte black. "Are you ready?" Damon asked. He was checking a small tablet device. Riley nodded. She tapped the tiny earpiece in her right ear, loud and clear. Damon looked at her. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His hand lingered on her cheek. "Listen to me," he said, his voice serious. "If anything goes wrong, if I give the signal, you drop the violin and you run. Do not look for me. Do not try to be a hero. You run." "I'm not leaving you behind," Riley said stubbornly. "You will," Damon ordered. That is the deal. He handed her a backstage pass. Go. Riley took a deep breath. She opened the van door and stepped out into the night. She walked toward the security checkpoint. She held her head high. She was not Riley the waitress. She was Riley the virtuoso. Name, the guard grunted. Riley Quinn, she said. The entertainment, the guard checked his list. He waved her through. She walked up the gangplank. The yacht was crowded. Models, politicians, and tech investors mingled on the deck. Riley made her way to the stage setup at the bow of the ship. She plugged her violin into the wireless transmitter. She checked the amps. They were massive. Industrial-grade speakers meant to blast music over the ocean waves. She looked up at the VIP balcony. Gavin Thorne was there holding a champagne glass. He was watching her. He raised his glass in a mock toast. Riley gripped the neck of her violin. "Showtime," she whispered. Riley stepped into the spotlight. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer boomed. "Please welcome Riley Quinn." There was polite applause. Riley did not smile. She lifted the electric violin. She stomped on a distortion pedal at her feet. She began to play. This was not Vivaldi. This was war. She played a haunting, screeching melody that cut through the chatter of the party. It was hypnotic and aggressive. The electric violin wailed like a banshee. Up on the balcony, Gavin Thorne looked intrigued. He set his drink down. He began to walk down the stairs toward the stage. "He is moving," Riley whispered into her comms, barely moving her lips. "I see him," Damon's voice crackled in her ear. "Keep him there. I am in the server room. I need 3 minutes." Riley ramped up the tempo. She closed her eyes, losing herself in the music. She played faster, harder. The crowd gathered around the stage, mesmerized. Thorne reached the front row. He stood right in front of her, staring up. He looked like a snake charmed by a flute. 2 minutes, Damon said. "I am bypassing the firewall." Riley held a long, sustaining note. She locked eyes with Thorne. She poured all her hatred into the sound. 1 minute, Damon said, "Downloading the manifest now. Got it. Files secured." Riley felt a surge of triumph. They had done it. "Wrap it up, Riley," Damon said. "Get to the exit." Riley began the finale. She was about to hit the last chord when her earpiece went dead. Static, then silence. "Damon," she whispered. No answer. Suddenly, the side door of the stage burst open. 2 massive security guards stepped out, and behind them was Marcus, Damon's head of security, the man who was supposed to be guarding the van. Marcus was holding a gun. Riley stopped playing. The music died. Thorne smiled. He clapped slowly. "Bravo," he said. He pulled a phone from his pocket. He tapped the screen. On the massive LED screen behind the stage, the feed changed. It showed the server room below deck. Damon was on his knees. Blood was dripping from a cut on his forehead. 2 guards were holding him down. Riley gasped. The violin slipped from her hand, hanging by its strap. "Did you really think," Thorne said, his voice amplified by the silence, "that you could walk into my house and steal from me?" He gestured to the guards. "Bring her to the cargo hold. The show is just beginning." They dragged her down 3 flights of stairs. The air grew colder, smelling of diesel and rust. They threw her into the main cargo bay. Riley stumbled, falling to her knees on the steel grate floor. Up. Damon was tied to a steel chair in the center of the room. His face was bruised. His suit was torn. "Damon," she screamed. She scrambled toward him. A guard kicked her in the stomach. Riley collapsed, gasping for air. "Stay down," the guard barked. Gavin Thorne walked in, followed by the traitor Marcus. Thorne looked around the cavernous metal room. It was lined with red shipping containers. "Open number 4, Thorne ordered. Marcus walked to a container and threw the latch. The heavy doors swung open. Riley covered her mouth to stifle a sob. Inside, huddled in the darkness, were dozens of young women. They looked terrified, emaciated. "This is my inventory," Thorne said coldly. "They ship out to Southeast Asia in an hour." He walked over to Damon. He grabbed Damon by the hair and yanked his head back. "And you," Thorne sneered, "you are going to watch." Damon spat blood at Thorne's shoes. "You are a dead man, Gavin," Damon growled. "The FBI has the files." Thorne laughed. He pulled a gold-plated pistol from his jacket. "The upload never finished, Damon. I jammed the signal." No one knows we are here and no one will find your bodies." Thorne turned to Riley. He saw the electric violin still strapped to her back. "I promised my guests a finale," Thorne said. He pointed the gun at Damon's head. "Play," he ordered Riley. "What?" Riley choked out. "Play a requiem," Thorne said. "Something sad. If you stop playing, I pull the trigger. If you play a wrong note, I pull the trigger." Riley stood up slowly. Her legs were shaking. She looked at Damon. His eyes were desperate. "Run," he mouthed. She could not run. She looked around the room. It was a metal box. The acoustics were terrible. Everything echoed. Then she saw it. In the corner, hooked up to the ship's announcement system, was a stack of Marshall amplifiers. The input cable was dangling right next to where she stood. Riley's mind raced. Physics, sound waves, resonance. If she created a feedback loop in a closed metal room. She plugged her violin into the amp stack. "Make it loud," Thorne mocked. Riley turned the volume knob on her violin body pack. She turned it all the way to 10. Then she turned the gain up on the distortion pedal. She looked at Damon. "Be ready." She lifted the bow. Riley did not play a melody. She slammed the bow onto the E string and slid it down while stomping on the overdrive pedal. The sound that erupted from the speakers was not music. It was violence. A high-pitched, piercing shriek of electronic feedback exploded into the room. It was deafening. It was physical. The sound waves bounced off the metal walls, amplifying instantly. It was a sonic boom contained in a box. Screech. Thorne screamed and dropped the gun, clapping his hands over his ears. The traitor Marcus fell to his knees, disoriented by the pressure change. Even the guards staggered back, their equilibrium shattered by the acoustic assault. Damon did not hesitate. Adrenaline flooded his system. He threw his body weight backward, tipping the heavy steel chair. The metal leg smashed into the shin of the guard behind him. Damon rolled, snapping one of the chair legs off against the floor. He was free. He launched himself at Thorne. Riley kept playing. She sawed at the strings, creating a wall of noise that made it impossible to think, impossible to hear. Damon tackled Thorne into the open shipping container. They brawled in the darkness. Marcus the traitor struggled to his feet. He reached for his weapon. Riley saw him. She unclipped the strap of her solid body electric violin. She swung it like a baseball bat. The heavy wooden body of the instrument connected with Marcus's head with a sickening thud. He went down and stayed down. The feedback was still whining, a high-pitched drill in their skulls. Riley kicked the amp over, severing the connection. Silence rushed back into the room, ringing and painful. A gunshot cracked. Riley froze. Damon walked out of the shipping container. He was holding Thorne's gold pistol. He was limping, but he was alive. Behind him, Gavin Thorne lay on the floor of the container, groaning, a bullet in his leg. Damon walked over to Riley. He dropped the gun. He pulled her into his arms. He buried his face in her neck. They were both shaking. "You crazy, brilliant woman," Damon breathed against her skin. "You nearly blew my eardrums out. Better than your brains," Riley sobbed, clutching the lapels of his torn suit. Sirens began to wail in the distance. The Coast Guard. Damon pulled back. He looked at her. He wiped a smudge of grease from her cheek with his thumb. "The upload did not fail," he whispered. "I set a dead man's switch." The moment Marcus cut the feed, the files were sent automatically to the authorities. "It is over." Riley looked at the container full of girls. They were starting to emerge, looking at Damon and Riley with wide, fearful eyes. "It is over," she repeated. 6 months later. The Hollywood Bowl was sold out. 18,000 people were chanting her name. Riley Quinn stood backstage. She adjusted the strap of her new violin. It was a Stradivarius, a gift from an anonymous donor that everyone knew was Damon. She was nervous. This was her first solo concert since the trial. Gavin Thorne was serving life in a supermax prison. Her sister, Maya, was in the front row, clean, sober, and smiling. Riley walked out onto the stage. The roar of the crowd was deafening. She walked to the microphone. "Thank you," she said. "This next song is for the man who taught me that silence is overrated." She looked at the VIP box, stage left. Damon Vance was standing there. He was wearing a black t-shirt and jeans, looking less like a CEO and more like a man who was finally at peace. He smiled at her, a real smile. Riley lifted her bow. She began to play. It was not angry this time. It was triumphant. It was a love song written in fire. After the concert in the dressing room, Damon was waiting. He held up a piece of paper. "What is this?" Riley asked, towel drying her hair. "The divorce papers," Damon said. "Our one-year contract is technically void since the threat is gone. You are free. You have your money. You have your career." Riley looked at the papers. Then she looked at Damon. She took the papers. She ripped them in half. "I do not recall giving you permission to fire me," she said, stepping closer to him. Damon's eyes darkened. "I am a difficult man to work for, Riley. I am possessive. I am arrogant. I know," Riley said. She wrapped her arms around his neck. "But the benefits package is incredible." Damon laughed. He kissed her. It was deep, passionate, and real. So he whispered against her lips. "What is the new contract?" "Lifetime term," Riley said. "No parole." Damon kissed her again. "Deal."